Well, hello everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm really happy to be here with you today. Last session of the day. I hope your brains are still on. Yeah? Are you enjoying the event so far? Yeah? Yes. Quite happy? Great. So I'm gonna make sure you also like this session actually. So my name is Tristan. We're gonna spend the next hour together talking about Power Query and especially Power Query best practices. Okay? Um, Probably if you managed to find this room, then you're probably smart enough to follow the session. So before we dive into the content, just to let you know that we are actually recording the session, so you will be able to watch it after, and also your colleagues or friends or whoever can watch this session as well. So a bit about me first. Yeah. I'm Tristan. I'm the founder of DataPulse, a company in France. As you can see, we don't have any logo yet. It's, I would say, under construction. I'm starting my first day as an entrepreneur tomorrow, so I'm quite excited about this. Basically, we are doing Power BI consulting services and trainings. I am also a Microsoft Data Platform MVP, so I share a lot of things on YouTube, on Twitter, on LinkedIn as well. So if you want to have a chat with me, I will be more than happy to answer your questions. Last thing, I'm the co-founder of the Club Power BI, which is basically the French Power BI user group. We are based in Paris, but we recently expanded to other cities in France, such as Lyon, Nantes. Have you ever heard about these cities as well? Yeah. Oui? Great. So again, if you understand French, or at least, or if you can speak French, you will be more than welcome to join us for these sessions, okay? We also have actually a YouTube channel where we broadcast all the events. Okay, so the session of today is about, I like this one. Did you know you can do this in PowerPoint? It's about Power Query. I'm gonna make a very quick introduction because some of you may have never used, or maybe they have heard about Power Query, but you actually have never used it. So we're gonna go through a very basic demo, like 2 minutes, and then we will see how and why you should use this tool properly. Okay? How many people here in the room have never used Power Query or consider themselves as beginners? Only some of you. So I only have experts here, right? Do you want to come? Okay, so still, I'm going to make a very quick introduction just to make sure everyone can grab the content and understand what we are talking about. So basically, Power Query is a tool which allows you to connect to several data sources. You can find it in Power BI Desktop, but also in Excel, in Power BI Service, in SSAS 2017 and 19, I guess, as well. Azure Analysis Services. It's also part of some steps or some flows in Microsoft Flow. It's in the Common Data Service. It's even in SSIS when you use it in ADF. Okay. So if you have no idea what I'm talking about right now, no problem. Okay. That's just to show off. I know some cool acronyms, and I'm that kind of technical guy. Okay. Probably the best place where you can actually use Power Query now is Power BI Desktop or Power BI Service. So I will use Power BI Desktop for my demos, but keep in mind that all the things I'm going to show you now, you can apply them to the tools I've just explained before, Excel and so on. Okay. So basically here, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to connect to a file, to an Excel file. So here you have the list of all the native connectors which are part of the Power Query tool or experience, I should say. So here I'm just going to quickly connect to this file, a very basic file which is basically not very clean, okay? As you can see here, so this is basically fake sales data, okay? So here you have a preview on the right side, and the data, as you can see it's not really ready to be analyzed yet. So I'm not gonna load it, I'm gonna actually edit it, and this will take me to the Power Query editor, where we're gonna spend most of our session today, as you can guess. So basically, this tool is the tool which is gonna allow you to clean and prepare your data for analysis. How? Through a very user-friendly interface. Okay, so as you can see at the top, you have buttons which allow you to clean the data. So for example, here, I would like to say, okay, I'm gonna use my first row as header. That's it. I'm gonna fill down the data so I can fill in the continents which are in the first column. Okay, and as you can see on the right side here, there are some applied steps. Okay, one action that you perform on the table is actually one step. Okay, at any stage, at any step, you can go back to it. And what is really cool is that you actually see how the table looks like for each step, right? So it's pretty cool. You can also, for example, filter the data. Let's say I don't need these rows, for example, or you can also split the columns. Okay, I'm not gonna go through all the different options that are available in Power Query. We could probably spend 1 or 2 days just on this specific stuff. But as you can see, it's pretty easy. It's really convenient. I don't consider myself as a developer. I haven't coded. For those of you who paid attention to what I was doing, there is actually this code that you can see here. It's the M language. So it's the language running behind the scene. Okay, M stands for mashup engine. So it's the name of the engine running behind Power Query. We will see as part of our best practices that even though you're not an expert or you don't consider yourself as a developer, still I think it's more than okay to turn on this formula bar, have a look at it, because it could help you a lot develop more advanced query without being too difficult. But we will get back to it later. So unless there are questions, no questions so far? Okay. As you can see here, I put this slide on all my demos. So sorry for those of you who have already attended some of my sessions or my training. Yes, 2 days ago. This is basically what I call the data iceberg. Okay, so this is what Power BI allows you to do, to connect to the data, to clean it, to model it, to analyze it, to visualize it, and to share it. Okay? Still, some people, not to say many people, present Power BI as a data visualization tool. Okay, that's how usually Power BI is presented by people. Okay, Power BI is all about data visualization. Yes, it's true, but it's partially true, as you can see here. The goal of Power BI is to give you some autonomy for each step of this iceberg. And Power Query is really focusing on the lower part of the iceberg, which is basically the connection to the source, as you saw earlier, and the cleansing part. Okay, this is where you're going to prepare the data, then modeling, and so on. Okay, so this is really important to have in mind. This will be one of the key message I want to deliver on this session as well, is if you use Power Query properly, then it's really good for your analysis. And it shows you that Power BI is not just about visualization as well, okay? So before we dive into the different best practices, why some best practices? First, because as you could see with my very quick demo, Power Query seems to be, or is, quite easy, right? It's very user-friendly, you have buttons, it's definitely a very user-friendly interface, okay? But very often, easy means messy, right? You know what I'm talking about? When I go to clients, most of the time I see bad performing queries, tons of tables, tons of steps. People get lost at some point. Why? Because they didn't follow best practices. Okay, and I guess that's why you're here today, right? So easy can mean messy. So that's the first reason why I guess you can hear. The second reason is that there are some common pitfalls I want you to avoid. Okay? I made so many mistakes when I started Power Query. It was probably 3 years ago. So I want you to benefit from my experience on this tool and to avoid the common pitfalls you could do. The third main reason is about scalability. Okay, you can do great stuff in Power Query without really following these best practices, but still, if you want to make sure your queries are flexible, understandable, reusable, scalable across the company, then you have to make sure you follow some standards, I would say, okay? It's always a risk to do some sessions on best practices because you might not agree on all the best practices I'm going to show you today, and that will be actually a good sign. Best practices are here to be challenged as well. So still, I think these best practices will help you a lot, and will offer you these 3 key assets. So let's go through our best practices. So the first one I wanted to cover, if it works, whoa. Okay, then it's spoiled. The first best practice is give your objects short and meaningful names. So we're going to start with very basic stuff, and then we're going to increase the level of difficulty. Okay. So this first one might sound very basic for you. Yeah, that's what I'm doing every day. Well, you're not. Actually, I can tell you, I've been auditing a lot of data models in Power BI. I go to many clients, I see what they do, and I can tell you that most of the times, even though this small stuff might sound very basic to you, I don't see it that often. So when I'm talking about objects, I'm actually talking about 3 different things: tables, columns, and steps, the steps that you saw earlier, okay? So why? 2 main reasons. First, you are building a data model. And who is in charge of loading data into the data model of Power BI? Power Query. Okay, this is the only place where you can actually rename all your objects. And these objects are really important for you to be successful in your BI projects, because otherwise people won't just be able to use the model, they won't be able to understand what the different objects mean, and truly it can be a source of failure for your project. Trust me. Business users who know nothing about BI, because that's the idea behind Power BI, right? Is that you have people building tools and models using Power Query and all the different steps. And then you have other people who just want to connect to the model. And sorry for that. And they want to benefit from, it's there now. They want to benefit from this model, right? So you have to make sure the names are correct. So if we go here, in this particular example, actually tough was the name of the sheet I connected to, right? But tough was just to indicate that it was a tough example. It's for training purposes. It's going to be tough to clean this data. But from a business perspective, it doesn't mean anything, right? So here, actually, I'm going to assume it's sales data. So I'm just going to say, for example, sales. Okay, so that will be the name of my table. And here, as you can see, these are the different columns of my table. So I'm going to make sure these columns are easy to understand. So here, pretty obvious, double click, I would say continent. And here I would say city, and here country. Okay, it's a very basic one. So I said tables, columns. The third object is steps. As you can see on the right side, the steps are given by default a technical name, okay, which is normal. Power BI is smart, but not that smart. Okay, he knows what you're doing, but only from a technical perspective. Still, you are doing this for business reason. Well, put this business reason in the name of the step. Why? Because trust me, it happened to me a lot. When you end up with so many different steps, when you did this, you knew what you were doing, right? But If you come back and reopen your PBIX 3 months after, for some reason, maybe because it was broken, or maybe it's because you want to make some changes. If you haven't documented your steps, then it's going to be a nightmare for you, a real nightmare. Okay? So here it literally takes 2 seconds to rename a step and to give it a business context or perspective. So here, for example, I'm going to say promoted headers. So here, right click, I can rename the step and say, actually what we did was to promote the years. As you can notice, I don't give steps names with spaces. Okay, some of them might do that. I will explain later why I don't do that. Okay. By the way, these steps are not exposed to the end user, to the business users, right? They are only available in Power Query when you develop your query. So this can be still like a developer style, okay, with underscore and stuff, but still give it a business context. So fill down. Here, what we did was actually we wanted to fill in or fill down the continents. Here, when we filtered the data, in reality, what we wanted to do was to skip null rows, just to make sure everyone understands. When you filter the data in Power Query, you actually remove the corresponding rows, right? It's not like a filter in Excel, for example. It's really, you delete the row, okay? One thing I forgot to mention as well, if for some reason you didn't make the right choice, at any time you can also delete the step, okay, or amend it using this button. Okay, so you're not locked to your first choices. At any time you can go back to your choice and rearrange things. So here, this one is a perfect example. Split column by delimiter. Yes, that's the technical name of the step. But what did I do? In reality, I wanted to separate the cities and the countries. Any reasons why I did that? Anyone? More filter option segment. Yes, that's what I wanted to hear. It's going to be much easier then to locate these points on the map, for example, or to be able to drill down at different levels, like continents, countries, and cities. Okay? So here what we did was actually to split city and country. And here we actually rename the main columns. This one you cannot really give, it depends on the columns you have, right? Okay, so that was the first best practice. Rename all your steps, columns, and stuff. You can also, as you can see on the tips, document your critical steps, which is probably one thing even further than just a basic renaming. For example, let's say this one, we think as a developer it's a critical step. So we can go to the properties and even give more context, or really explain in plain text what we wanted to do, okay? I want to make sure blah, 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 okay? This is really helpful as well because you can see it here when I hover the mouse, and we will go later to the advanced editor where basically you have all the end code corresponding to all the transformations. And as you can see, before each step, there is actually the comments, because this is actually a comment from a code perspective. Okay? So really helpful as well. You should not do that for all your steps. I agree with that. Let's not be too extreme. Okay? Do it just for your critical steps. Organize your queries using folders. So this one has really nothing to do with renames and stuff, but I didn't really know where to put it, so I just put it here. You can actually, as you can notice on the left, group your queries in folders and subfolders. This is really helpful as well because, again, this won't change anything in terms of performance and stuff, but it's for reliability and make some changes more easily, identify the different roles. Later, I will give you some suggestions on the names you should give to your folders because they have something to do with the data model itself. Okay. Second best practice. Anyone guess what I'm going to talk about? Suggestions? I may have forgotten some, actually. So, let's see. Only know the data you need. Well, this one, again, yeah, it's obvious. I do this every day. No, you don't. You don't. So, why? There is this engine in Power BI when you load data in memory, which is called the Stack engine. Okay? This engine loads data using in-memory, so it stores a copy of the data in memory, in cache, in your local computer, and it uses not rows, but columnar storage. So what does it mean? It means that it breaks down the table not row by row, but column by column. And for those of you who wonder how you can optimize your model, first thing, which is obvious, is just get rid of the columns you don't need. Pretty obvious, right? And the second thing about optimization is that you should especially remove the columns which have a very high cardinality. Cardinality means the number of distinct values. Okay? So if you have useless columns, and if these useless columns have a high cardinality, then it's really a good reason for just remove these columns. Okay? There is also another reason for that, which has nothing to do with performance, but it's for usability. Okay? There is always this one person in the project who said, "Oh, let's load everything. We never know, just in case." No, don't do that. You are building a data model that your users need to understand. If even yourself, if you are the developer, if you don't understand the role of the column, how your users are going to understand the column? Tell me how. It won't simply happen. So get rid of the columns you don't understand or you don't need. The third reason why you should do that is because before, in like traditional BI, I'm going to make it a bit provocative here because I come from the business, okay? So I don't do that much on SQL Server and all that stuff. But anyway, before the choices you were making were, important because whenever you wanted to make some changes, it would take a huge amount of time, right? Here, we're going to see it in a sec. How long does it take to go back to the query editor and say, okay, now that I understand the business meaning of this particular column, I want to add it to the model? How long is it going to take? Well, it depends on your ability to click, but basically it should be very quick. Okay? So let's see that. I'm going to use a second example. Let me find this. Start. No, it's not this one. It should be this one. Yep. So here I basically used another connector, which is a SQL. No, sorry, it's not this one. It should be. Let me find this. Sales. Yeah, I have so many files. That would be probably a best practice as well, right? Yeah, probably it will be this one. Okay, so here, as you can see, I connected to a SQL database, okay, where I have a fact table about sales. And there is this button here, which helps me do two things. Either go to column. This one, not so many of you know it, even very advanced hardware users. To be honest, I discovered this button maybe 6 months ago, even though I've been using hardware for years. This is probably the only button which doesn't generate any step. Okay? This button is just for usability. It's just for you to help you check, okay, I want to check. So as you can see, this table has many columns. And I just want to check, okay, what is internal comments? Okay, so it just takes me to the comments. But as you can see on the right side, it didn't generate any step. Okay, so that was just a tip. But the thing I really wanted to show you is this one, choose columns. I think we could say that as a best practice, you should always have this step as your very first step. Because you're going to make sure you only select the columns that you need and that you understand for the reasons I mentioned before. Okay, so that's what I did here. I I basically clicked on this button, and it generated the following step where I basically selected 5 or 6 columns, I guess. Yep. How long does it take me to change this? 1 click. And if I want to add 3 columns, press OK. Okay. So very basic advice, very basic best practice, but just do it. Okay, just do it. There is a second example I wanted to show you on this particular stuff. Is disable node when it's relevant. Anyone knows what I'm talking about here? And so what is this basically? Merge. So that's the perfect answer. There is just one word that I didn't like. You say when you merge. Is it a merge? Do I use the merge button? We're gonna do it together, right? But is it a merge? It's not a merge. It's a basically, if you come from the SQL community, it's basically append. Union. It's a union. And on Power Query, it's append, okay, which is different from merge. We will see it in a sec. So, but that was the right answer. So let's go here. So let me find this. This is probably the biggest challenge of my demo, is to find the relevant file. But anyway. Okay, so that will be probably here. Let me find this. Not this one. Yeah, it's this one. Sorry for that. So everything loaded. So if I go here, as you can see, I have 3 queries. The first one is France, where I basically have the sales from France. And I have another query which the source here does not matter. Okay, so let's assume it's another source. Okay, here in this case, to be honest, it's the same source. Okay, but we don't care about this. The same principle. So here we have 2 queries, France and international. These queries, they have exactly the same structure. They measure the same thing. They have the same grain. They measure the same KPI. They are exactly the same. It's just that it's France and other countries. Okay? So you are definitely interested in appending the content of these 2 tables. How? There is actually a button for that. If I go here, I can not merge. I can append queries, either as part of this query or as a new query. Okay. And here, so I'm going to say, okay, append France and international. And it's going to basically generate this table, which was the same as I've done before, which was this one. Okay. You can see the following, the corresponding, end code. Very complex, very, very complex. Where basically you combine the contents of the 2 tables. So this has to do with modeling. Okay, I'm not gonna try to convince you why you should do this, but just keep in mind that do it. If there are questions, I will be more than happy to answer these questions at the end. Okay, so anyway, we have this table which basically appended the contents of the 2 tables. So now the question is, do I need the original separate tables? Well, you already know the answer, right? I need them, but let's be more precise. Do I need to load these columns into the data model? Do I need to expose this to the business users? The answer is no. Okay, so if I go here, I can just say disable the load of the query. Okay, unfortunately, there is no bulk options to do so. I don't know if there is someone from Microsoft here, or maybe online, we don't know. I would like to be able to multi-select the queries and say don't load, but unfortunately, it's not here yet. So I have to do it query by query. Okay, it's the same story for the folder. If I create a folder with, like, let's say 10 queries, which is the best practice to do that, I usually put in a folder all the queries, which I call the staging queries. So these queries are helper, and it will be so convenient to go at the folder level and say, okay, all these queries I don't want to load them, but unfortunately we don't have this option yet. So I have to do it query by query or table by table, if you prefer. And in this particular scenario, some of you might be a bit might be surprised, because I'm not deleting these tables, right? I'm just saying that use them in the query, okay? And as you can see, these tables are still part of my data refresh, okay? Still, I don't want to load these queries into Power BI. Again, two main reasons. Usability, okay? Because I don't want to confuse my users whether they should use these tables or not. And second reason is performance, because whenever you close and apply here from Power Query and then you load the data, basically, as part of the refresh and load time, well, the engine actually loads the data. So if you decide to load these particular tables, then it will probably take longer for your whole model to compute and to refresh. And as well, if I go here, as you can see, I have two PBIX. This one is the one where I didn't follow the best practice because I everything. Okay, this one, I'm not gonna open it. Trust me, I disabled the log of the two staging queries. And as you can see, the other one has twice the size of this one. Can you imagine that? I have a funny story to tell you about this. One of my first clients when I started as a consultant was 2 years ago, more or less. I went to him, and he was a click guy, you know, ClickSense. Okay, I knew it from the beginning, because when I arrived, he told me, right, Tristan, the company forced us to shift from Click to Power BI because we were in Office 365, whatever the reason. Okay, they had to shift. And this guy told me Power BI is slow. Power BI is really, really slow. It takes huge amount of time to open. It takes a huge amount of time to refresh. So it's really, really slow. Okay? And you wonder what this guy was doing. Well, actually, he was not following this best practice. Because what he was doing is that he would connect to different tables which had exactly the same structure with the same column names and stuff. And he would basically append these columns because he was still a BI guy, so he knew what he had to do, right? But he didn't know this option. So he was basically loading everything into the data model. So it was taking a lot of time. The file was very big. Here I don't have so much data, so it's okay, but he had a lot of data. So we just went to Power Query, and with a couple of clicks, I showed him this option. We divided by 2 the size of the model. It would take, I don't know, we optimized really the refresh time and stuff. And now the funny thing is that this guy, it's a true story, I'm not lying, okay? This guy, I don't know if there are some French people here who come to the meetups, they will be okay with what I'm saying. This guy comes to every meetup, and he's now the first probably Power BI fan in France. I'm really honest, it's a true story, okay? So sometimes when you follow best practices, then it can change everything, okay? So pretty obvious. Only load the data you need. Choose columns as your very first step and disable run relevant. Okay, so let's have a look at the next one, which is be data module driven. Okay, so here what I'm talking about is that let's do this. So build tables, a pivot table or a Power BI chart consumes, not produces. I love this sentence, especially because this is not for me. I stole it from an MVP who is called Ken Pulse. Some of you may know this guy. He's really the kind of Marco Russo with the nice guru. So it's the Marco Russo Power Query, more or less. Okay? So he's really good. I think he's based in Canada. And he wrote a book on Power Query. And this sentence, it really hit me because I found it very interesting. Why? Because it's just an example, but it shows that when you are in Power Query, and we already talked about it when I was referring to column names and stuff, but I'm going to repeat it here. You should be data model driven. What does it mean? It means that whatever the choices that you make in the query editor, it should always be driven by the business needs. I wrote it down here. Yeah, the business needs should drive your choices, and thus the data model, right? Because the data model is here to address and to reply to the business needs. Okay, so there is a very basic example on that, because obviously be data module driven is much more, much larger than just this simple sentence. But anyway, so what I'm going to do here is that if we go back to our query here, remember, it was the first demo I made? Well, actually, if we look at this particular table, there is a problem. Anyone see the problem here? It looks okay. We could definitely load this data and try to make some analysis, but still there is something missing here. Anyone see? Yeah, yeah. Don't fight, don't fight. Yes, I'm going to repeat for the audience. The years are in different columns, which is basically what a Power BI chart can produce. This can be the output, even though I don't recommend to build that kind of chart in Power BI for other reasons, but I'm not going to talk about this today. Okay? Don't ask me any questions on that topic, otherwise we'll be here until 10 here. Anyway, so this is what a Power BI chart can actually produce, right? Using a matrix or a table, for example. But this is definitely what this is, not what it consumes as an input. And when you are in Power Query, you are not building the output, but the input. You are being data model driven. Okay? So here there is this very famous and very powerful thing, which basically allows me to unpivot my data. So here I have continent, city, and country, which are okay, because they have their own dedicated columns. Have a look at here. Before I do this transformation, I have 17 columns and 18 rows, okay? And I'm just gonna say right-click and unpivot all the columns. As you can see, there are a couple of other options, like unpivot columns, unpivot only selected columns, where, to be honest, I'm not sure if there was a difference at the answer here, but it doesn't matter because I never use them actually. I always use the second option, which is unpivot all the columns. Anyone, you already gave the answer more or less, but anyone wonders why I always use this second option? Exactly, you got it. If there is another year at my source, you remember the steps are recorded. So whenever the source changes, I need to make sure the choices I make on my steps are scalable and are gonna allow me to go with new data, which could be new years, okay, as different columns. Okay, so if I do this and pivot the other columns, well, you already manage this situation. Okay, and you're gonna see the corresponding M code. What you see here is that only the columns that you wanted to keep were hard-coded, which means that all the other columns are not hard-coded, which basically means it's fully dynamic. Okay. And here it's much more useful now because I have 252 rows on my table. And as you can see, my years, which used to be in different columns, now have their own dedicated column. And this is what a Power BI chart or pivot table, doesn't really matter, consume. Do you agree with that? Now it's going to be much easier to build a report or KPIs, tax calculations on top of that. Do you all agree with this? Yeah? More or less? Okay, so you know what? Try both. Try the year version with different columns and this one, and then come back to me. Okay? I'm pretty sure about the answer. Actually, some of you might wonder, okay, but me, I was asking myself this question when I started. How do I know when I need to unpivot the data? It's not that obvious, especially, I don't know what's your background, but again, I come from the Excel world. So this is basically a really well-known transformation in SQL. Okay, you can do this in SQL as well, even though it's not that easy to do it, not as easy as here. Anyway, when you come from the Excel world, it's not that obvious to know when should I do this. So I'm going to give you a tip or a key, okay, a golden rule to know that. You know there are two types of objects in Power BI, which are facts and dimensions. Okay, so to be more precise, it's not in Power BI, it's in BI in general. Okay, because the funny thing about Power BI is that yes, it's a modern tool, but in reality, it uses very old techniques, right? That's what I like about Power BI. Anyway, so you have facts and dimensions. The rule is simple. Whenever you have dimensions, so dimension is basically an object which is going to reply or answer your business questions, such as when, how, what, why, that kind of stuff. So it could be products, suppliers, dates, years. Well, these kind of objects, they deserve their own column. Why? Because they will be used as part of the axis of your charts, and their only role in the data model will be here to filter the data. That's the only thing they are here for, and that's more than enough. That's really good. But they deserve their own column, which was not the case here, because here, as a business user, ask yourself, do I want to see or to analyze my sales, here it's sales data, by year? The answer is yes. Okay. My years, do they have their own dedicated column? The answer is no. So I need to unpivot my years. Okay, pretty easy, right? Any questions? No. Okay. So business needs first, data model first. Fill your data. If we take a step further, because here it was just showcase the unpivot thing, but basically all your choices should be driven on that. So identify the grain of your data, the KPIs, the facts and dimensions. And actually, if we go back to this slide. Okay, so we basically lost the, let me just, weird. Okay, let me just check that. Should be back again now. Okay, sorry for that. So if we go back to this iceberg over here, the logical way you would do things in Power BI is that you import the data, you clean it, you model it, and you do it that way, okay, from the bottom to the top. Well, actually, what you should always do first is to focus this. First, fill the data, identify the grain. What are going to be my facts, my dimensions? What do I want to focus on? Okay, and this is obviously your users' needs. Okay? And then only then deal things in Power Query, not the other way around. Otherwise, you end up with crazy queries. You get lost. You don't know where you're going. You lose your objective, and you're not data model driven, which is a problem, I guess. Okay. Use parameters. I love this one. So I don't know if I can try full screen again because, yeah, okay. So use parameters. Who has never heard or about or used parameters in Power Query? Only one person? Oh, I'm pretty surprised. 2 persons? Okay, it's gonna raise or not? Okay. I'm pretty surprised, to be honest, because usually when I present this in conferences or trainings, usually people don't know that stack, but because most of you know it, maybe I can go a bit faster. So basically, you can use an object in Power Query, which is neither a table nor a column or whatever you want. It's actually a parameter. It's going to allow you to make your queries more flexible, easier to read and to maintain. Okay, which are valid reasons to use parameters, right? That's what you want to have. So let's have a look and see how you can create parameters. So maybe I'm gonna go here to my sales final. So there is actually a button in the interface because, as you can see, most of the things you want to do in Power Query, you can do them through the interface, which is really cool. So here you can say, okay, I want to create a new parameter. So as you can see, I already have 2 parameters in my queries. So I can give it a name, a description, a type. I can suggest values or take the values of the parameters coming from another query. And I can give it an actual or current value, okay? So anyone wonders what could be the use cases behind the use of these parameters? There are many, okay? I'm gonna show you 2 use cases. Anyone? So those of you who use parameters, why? Yeah. Well, did you prepare the slides? Because that's actually the 2 use cases I'm going to show you. Any other suggestions? No? Well, they are probably the most, spread use cases. So here, as you can see, I have a parameter which is basically a date. Okay, so it's in the French format, but anyway. And I also put the name of the server as a parameter. Okay, and if we have a look at here in my sales order table, at my source, my source is actually using the parameter I have defined before the session. Actually, we didn't create this one together, but now we know how to create a parameter. So it's actually really useful because, as you can see, you can refer to parameters in any other queries of your PBIX file. And let's imagine that you have 10 queries or 15 queries or even 5 queries or even 2 queries using this exact same source. Then managing the source through a single unified object is much more helpful content for me, okay, for you. Because whenever I want to change the source, well, it's centralized somewhere. So that's the first use case. The second use case, as you mentioned, filter. Here, this is the M language corresponding to my filter step. I have a column in my database which is called order date. Okay, and for some reason, I only want to focus on a particular range of date. So as I told you earlier, I have this parameter which is the date, and if I can go here, I can actually use this parameter as part of my filter experience. Here I can either type in something or refer to a parameter I've previously created. Okay, and this is again very useful, very helpful because basically any inputs that you have new project, like source, filter, criteria. It could be other things. Okay, I'm not going to go too much into the details. I will let you imagine how you could actually use these things in your particular businesses. But this is really, truly helpful. And the last thing I wanted to mention on parameters is the fact that I think it was released probably 6 months or 8 months ago, you can actually change the parameters in Power BI service, not in the desktop where you actually develop your stuff, but in the service. Okay, so I'm not going to explain Power BI desktop and BI service. I'm going to assume you know this. So here, what I'm going to do is basically, let's assume I am published, my local PDX. I uploaded my data set in the service for many reasons: collaboration, automation, all that stuff. Okay. So here I have logged in with my Power BI account. I can see my data set, and if I go here in the schedule refresh, okay, in the parameters, well, actually, my parameters are even available in the service. You see that? So what does it mean? Well, it's really helpful because I don't have to go back to the desktop, change the parameter, and re-upload again the DX. I can just do it from the cloud portal of Power BI. And there is a so yeah, before I talk about the use case, anyone wonder why it's great? Don't tell me it's because it's SQL Server and SQL Server is bad. That's not the reason. Actually, I love SQL Server. Well, the answer is, to be honest, I did it on purpose. Yeah, it's just to showcase how things can go bad if you don't follow best practices. If we go back to my PBIX, actually here, so if I try to manage my parameter, for some reason, I forgot to specify the data type of my parameter. And by default, it's like, in IT, we say by design. Okay, you know this expression? By design, whenever you upload a PDX file where your parameters don't have a specific data type, then you cannot edit these parameters in the service. Okay, that's good to know. That's more than it's a tip. It's also a best practice. Always give a data type to your parameter. Again, yeah, this is obvious. I'm defining a parameter. I'm going to put a data type. I can tell you that in 60% cases, well, the parameters I see don't have any proper data types. And then you have troubles. Okay, anyway, so if you go back here, I can actually edit this one because for this one, I have set up a data type to date. One cool thing that you can see here is that the description I put in the desktop is also available here, so I can have more context on how this particular parameter should be used. Anyone can try to guess what could be the use cases? The use case here. So actually, I do it on purpose. To filter the data in the desktop, I'm going to give you a hint. In the desktop, where maybe my computer is not, that good, especially, my clients, they want to do big data, but when I see that computer, I'm like, well, you will probably do big data before many years. But anyway, here it can solve the problem. How? In Power BI desktop, you can work with a small subset of the data, right? Do you really need all the data to develop? Not really. You just need a small subset of the data, okay? In French, we have this word, I don't know how to translate it in English, recette. It's when we try to test the KPIs, okay? So maybe you can choose a range where you know how the KPIs should be computed and what should be the result. So you can definitely work on this date range in Power BI desktop. So the key thing here is that you are not importing all the data locally in Power BI desktop. So this could be really helpful if you have a computer which doesn't have a lot of RAM, because this is the part of the computer which is used whenever you load the data. So you work on a small subset of the data, and then when you are done, you just put a you put a filter on the parameter filter, and you deploy your PDX, your datasets to the service. Nothing prevents you from expanding to whatever you want. Okay, this has nothing to do with premium or incremental refresh. No. Okay. Yes. So the way. Yeah. Okay, so the question, I don't know if anyone really got the question, so I'm going to repeat it. The question is actually, if I change the parameter, what is going to be the impact on the performance? So when people talk about performance, there are two types of performance in Power BI. There is the amount of time it takes for the model to compute, to refresh. Okay? Here, this parameter will have an impact on that. Why? Because I'm not going to do it now, but if I change the parameter, what do I need to do next? I need to refresh the whole data model, right? So yes, the answer is yes. I'm going to have to refresh the whole data model before the data is actually available to the end user. Okay? And then the second type of performance is whenever they click on some stuff, here definitely no, okay, because the data has been imported, cached into memory. So yeah, does that answer your question? Yes. And the parameter itself, the output of the query? Exactly. Yes. The answer is yes. I'm going to repeat the question. Can the parameter can be the result or the output of a query? So I can see we have an advanced user here. Actually, when I decided to create my parameter, I had three options: any value, list of values, or query. Okay, so you can actually refer to a list, which is an object of Power Query, or another query. Okay, and then at some point, the parameter needs to have a specific value, right? You cannot return a table, but still the value you can return can come from another query. So you can make it kind of dynamic. Does that answer your question? Great. Okay, so it seems like we have 2 or 3 minutes left. I'm more than ready to keep it a bit going. I still had one best practice I wanted to cover with you, so we're gonna do it very quickly, and then I will be more than happy to answer questions and go further if you want. So let's dig in. The next one, sorry, the last one is don't be afraid of the advanced editor. Again, I love this sentence, and it's not from me. It's from a guy called Eric Svensson. He's a real good friend of mine. Maybe you attended his session. He's an MVP. He's from Denmark, and he did a session with this title, basically, in Paris in June when we organized the first edition of the Power Saturday. And his session was awesome. And I love the title of the session because it says it all. Don't be afraid of the advanced editor. You can do crazy stuff, and it's not too difficult to go into the content, to go into the detail of this language, okay? So a few things here to know is, first, you have to turn on the formula bar and IntelliSense. So to do that, the first option here, you actually have to turn on the formula bar in order to see the corresponding code of your queries, okay? It's not on by default. I'm a bit surprised it's not. I've asked many times to Miguel Lopez, who is the owner of Power Query at Microsoft, why don't you turn this on by default. There are several reasons for that. Okay, I think that they should turn it on by default. Anyway, you can do it yourself if you go to the View tab, Formula Bar, just to see the corresponding code. Okay. There is actually another thing that you should turn on in order, to see these colors and this syntax helper whenever you type, whenever you type in functions and stuff. It's called MIntellisense. So if I go here, no, sorry, it's in the preview features. So it's still in preview, which means that it should work. But if it doesn't, then don't be too demanding with Microsoft. It's still under construction. Yet it's available, so you can use it. MIntellisense. So here it's basically a helper for the syntax of the functions and stuff. Another tip, sorry, I'm gonna have to be a bit quick. You can actually have access here if I do blank query. If you don't really know which function to use, you actually have a tip here. If you create a query and type in this, you actually get, yes, you get the list. Well, it's actually a record of all the Power Query functions, the native M functions. So I'm going to actually turn this into a table so I can kind of simulate a Google search experience within Power Query. So let's say I love working with lists. I had a demo which was funny about lists, but we probably won't have time to cover this demo anyway. Let's say Tristan told me about lists. Okay, I'm going to investigate on this. You can just type in lists. And then here you have all the native M functions, which are going to allow you to play with lists, which are a real interesting and helpful object in Power Query, where basically a column, each column of your table is actually a list. Okay, so you have in mind more or less what you can do. You can automate many, many different things. Last thing about the M language, without being too difficult, there are some attendees here who attended my workshop on Monday. They knew nothing about M in the morning, and at the end of the day, they could build their own M functions to, for example, generate calendar tables on the fly, to append the content of different CSV files or Excel files which are part of the same folder, or Excel sheets which are part of the same workbook, for example. Or another example is connecting to a URL in the web, where part of the URL is dynamic, let's say a letter or a number. Well, they could do that, and I'm sure they could tell you it's not too difficult, okay? There are many, many different resources online. So just go and have a look at it. Don't be afraid of the advanced editor, okay? Well, I think that's it for today. Let's just catch up. You have my Twitter, my YouTube channel where I have some videos in French and in English. Okay, don't worry. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the session. Thanks a lot.